Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the EAP Counsellor podcast. I am so excited today with the special guest that I have to interview today, who I will tell you about in a moment. I love recording podcasts and I love chatting to people who are out there doing amazing things in the wellbeing space. And today's interviewee, I guess you could call him, is definitely doing that, out there doing incredible things. And I think that you will love what you hear and, be really inspired by what Tom has to say. So let me introduce, and if you hear my dog in the background, Pippa, my Labradoodle, she's like, my therapy dog. She's at my feet often during counseling or coaching sessions, and she's quite curious in regards to who is walking past who's walking past the house. So if you hear a very cute guard dog, that is my dog Pippa. So apologies for that, everybody. As mentioned, I have a fantastic guest, and it's time to introduce Tom, who is the founder of Ctrl Your Scroll. Ctrl Your Scroll is a company and movement dedicated to helping people build healthier digital habits, improve their well-being, and feel good about logging off. See, you're already interested, I know. The idea was born when Tom decided the toll his own device use was taking on his mental health and broader well-being. Curious to make a change, he began exploring practical ways to find digital balance, drawing on expert insights, research-backed strategies, and plenty of personal trial and error. What he discovered was simple but powerful. When we change how we use our devices, we can genuinely and drastically improve how we feel. Together with co-founder Xavier, Tom now speaks to schools, workplaces, and sporting clubs about how others can do the same by creating more mindful relationships with their technology and reclaiming time for what really matters. Beyond the talks and workshops, Ctrl Your Scroll is growing a community of people who are choosing to live more intentionally by embracing offline experiences, striving for digital balance, and building a life where disconnecting is embedded into daily life. Tom, welcome. For listeners who haven't heard of Ctrl Your Scroll, can you share your story behind it and what made you realize your digital habits were affecting your well-being?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you so much, Lou, for having me on the podcast today. I've been a big fan of yours and the team approaches for a while, and it's a really cool moment for me to be able to come on and speak with you today about Control Your Scroll and talk all things well-being. Um, yeah, essentially, there was a bit of a moment of realization, or there is a specific moment where this sort of whole movement or the business really started. Um, a few years ago, I was actually studying over in Italy for an entire year, and
Wow.
when I was over in Italy, I was traveling all across the countryside and all across Europe. And one place that I really wanted to go was a place called Matera. Now, I'm not sure if your listeners will know what Matera is, but it's a little tiny little town, sort of more southern Italy.
Mhm.
And I really wanted to go to this place because it was actually the backdrop for the recent James Bond film No Time to Die. Now, I'm a big James Bond fan, and so
Great.
this
Love it.
this was one of the places which I'd penciled in this whole time. I purposely put it towards the back end of my trip because it was something I really was looking forward to, and I really wanted to go. And anyway, I was there for about a week in the end, and at the end of this week, which I was in Matera, I was heading back to Rome. I was on a bus, and I had a notification come through to my phone, which was in my pocket at the time, and I pulled it out and saw that it was my screen time notification. And usually this was something I didn't really pay much attention to at all. I didn't care about. It didn't really come into my orbit.
Yep.
Except for this time, I was staring down the barrel of about an 8 or 10 hour bus ride. So I thought, I'll pull it out, I'll have a look and see what's actually going on here. And what I saw completely shocked me. I realized that I was spending between 8 and 9 hours a day on my phone
Yeah, wow.
when I was in the most amazing place that I'd probably ever been in the entire world. It's voted as one of the most amazing destinations, and people fly from all corners of the globe to go there.
Yeah,
And
wow.
I couldn't help but think that, my phone and my devices had really taken control of me. And if I was going to be doing this in such an amazing place, then, I'm obviously doing it everywhere else. And so Ctrl Your Scroll really sort of started from that moment. It just completely began as a way of me reducing my screen time. What I
What a
then,
realization.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, and
and
yeah,
so powerful as well.
yeah, and I don't think like my device usage had been the same the whole time. It wasn't anything different in material. I guess that it was probably that moment which really sparked a realization, and it was probably the enormity of what had happened, and the opportunity that I felt like I'd lost was really the thing that sort of brought it home to me. And yeah, that sort of started the journey. I began researching and looking at ways to reduce my screen time. That was really all I cared about at the start, and that was the only thing I focused on. And it was a really personal journey. I wasn't doing this because I thought, I'm going to turn it into a movement or a business, or I'm going to speak to schools and workplaces about this. It
Mm,
was a really personal thing. And what I started to realize was that the more that I created healthier digital habits, the more I improved my well-being out of sight. And that, I started to realize that the amount and the ways that I was using my devices in particular, was having a massive impact on my well-being. And it was only when I actually started to take control of them and started to create healthy digital habits, which I realized the impact that it was having on my well-being.
mm.
And yeah, we wrapped all those learnings up, and that education and the information and the strategies and everything that we've found. And now we try to help other people do exactly that.
I love it. Such an important realization. And what comes up for me is it's surprising, isn't it, how much our habits and, our unconscious habits really play out and really affect our well-being. And, we're doing things that can have and do have a negative impact on ourselves without even realizing it until there's that pivotal moment that sort of shocks us back into, oh, hang on a minute, I actually, you know I need to have a look at this.
Absolutely. And I think those pivotal moments are super important. They might not be, the moment that you realize your screen time is 8 hours when you're in a beautiful place in Italy. They
Yeah,
might be that you are at home and, a family member's trying to speak to you, and you're looking at TikTok, or that, you head out and you can't exercise now without taking a device.
yes.
We find that, and the more conversations we have with, young people, and all people really in
Mm,
general, that most people have a pivotal moment, or they have a sort of a moment of realization. And we sort of try to tap into that, and get them to explore that, and why they actually feel the way they do, and then sort of using that as a catalyst, and as the fuel for them to then go and motivate them to change their habits, and really reclaim back their time and their well-being.
that's fantastic. Quick question. Did you enjoy the week?
Look, I did. I mean, even though I was obviously spending so much time looking down at a screen, Matera is a absolutely amazing place, and I'd recommend, if anyone is lucky enough to have the chance to be in Italy around that area, go and have a look. It really is James Bond like place.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. At night, the whole town lights up, and you can go
Mm,
up to the top of the town and
yeah.
look down over the Duomo, and the beautiful sort of scenery. And
Mm,
as you'd expect in Italy, the food is absolutely to die for. So it was a good week.
yeah.
But I can't help but feel as though if I had such a great week there, what I would have done with 56 hours more of
Absolutely.
time there. So yeah,
Maybe you need to go back.
I think so. I think that's the only way to go now. So I can
Absolutely.
go back, and it'll be about 2 or 3 years since I've been there, so I can see the difference, and
Yeah.
the changes that I've made, and maybe bring that back to Australia.
definitely put it on your bucket list. Second trip.
Yeah.
You've turned your own experience into something really powerful that now supports others in, whether it be workplaces, schools, or clubs. What's been the most surprising feedback or response you've received since starting Control Your Scroll?
Yeah, I think probably the way and the nature that these kind of issues or these topics or the worry around digital habits doesn't discriminate
Mm,
against certain people or certain age groups. You know, we come into when we started Control Your Scroll, the whole concept was that we would go directly to young people, and we thought, young people are the only people that are dealing with this. Young people are having the biggest issues. That's where we need to go. We need to go straight to the source, and that we can work with the young people, and we'll sort them out, and then we'll be fine.
yep.
But we're just amazed to find that it's just as much the adults as it is the kids, even potentially more so. Um, Young people are probably more susceptible to some of the harms, especially that social media can bring
Mhm.
through things like comparison, online bullying, and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But for the overall impact on well-being, we're finding that it's just as much across all age groups, and that sometimes the younger people and the younger kids that we work with in a school, as opposed to potentially maybe a workplace or just older people in general, that the kids are actually more aware of what's going on. They're
Yes.
more acutely aware of some of the impacts that the devices are having. And so I think that's probably been the biggest surprise for me, has definitely been the way that this isn't an issue which is across, just is, affecting a certain age group or socioeconomic status or demographic. This is pretty much everyone.
Yeah,
Um, and
absolutely. It is.
yeah, yes.
And like that is, it's an amazing realization because we could very easily just think, oh, yeah, it's the youngsters and the young generation. But you're right. I just think to, say going out for coffee, going out for lunch, dinner, um, everyone, well, not necessarily everyone, but so many people have their phone like on the table, at the table, checking messages, taking phone calls. Um, so it is all ages. And even seeing, say, families going out for dinner and to entertain the kids, the youngsters, really little ones, could be, say, on an iPad and things like that. So yes, it is across all age groups, and yeah, I'm glad you've sort of mentioned that today because it is it's an issue and a challenge, yeah, for everyone. So, being alerted to what you just mentioned is really important.
We had um a really interesting moment in a workshop actually just last week. We were down at a school in Ballarat, and the year 7 student, we were talking about digital experiences and the impact that they can potentially have on relationships.
Yep.
And we had a year 7 student get up and speak about how when they now go to their grandparents' house, that their grandparents sit on their iPads and either play games or scroll through Facebook or on news sites and those type of things on their iPads, and that this young person had perceived that that had impacted their relationship which they had with their grandparents. And yeah, I think that just nails home or just illuminates the way that this is an issue.
Mm,
On one hand, we had a 12-year-old young girl here speaking about in the way that these devices are impacting their relationship with their 85-year-old grandparents.
yeah,
And it just shows the complete spectrum of which devices are impacting us, and that this is an issue which just goes beyond ages and demographics, I think.
absolutely. What a brave year 7 person to
Absolutely.
to say that. And yeah, I love it when people find their voices. during workshops and information sessions and things like that. It's excellent. You work with lots of organizations. In your view, how is digital overwhelm showing up in the workplace? And whether this, how does it impact well-being, performance, or connection at work?
Yeah, well, I think it impacts all of those three areas you just mentioned: well-being, performance, and connection. I think with the well-being, I know the research shows that more connectivity, or when we pile on technological connection at the workplace, and then which flows into the home, this creates more stress.
Yeah.
It creates expectation. It creates perceived feelings of never having switched off, or that you're constantly available, you're constantly on.
Mm.
Um, I know that there's in Australia here we have rules and laws around the right to disconnect.
Yes.
But what we're finding in a lot of the workplaces that we've worked in so far is that some employees still do, have sometimes direct and indirect pressure to be available, and that even though it's not maybe not be a directive, that because technology is such an easy way to connect and to communicate, that they're worried that they're going to miss out on something. They're worried that they'll get to work the next day and not be prepared,
Mm.
and that it's sort of this informal pressure which is really driving a lot of this connectivity and just adding to the amount of stress which they're under. Um,
Absolutely. The fears and doubts are,
yeah,
playing a huge part, aren't they,
yeah,
into that?
absolutely. Yeah, and the fear that if they miss something that they're going to be behind, and if they're behind, then they're not going to meet KPIs, and if they're not meeting
Mm.
KPIs, then and it's a cascading effect, and that's yeah, and I think employees particularly perceive connectivity as one of the as a major requirement, and as a major driver for their performance. And so yeah, I'll speak about it in a minute, but we'll sort of look at the ways that that might actually be having the inverse effect.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I suppose in terms of performance at work, if we go move away from well-being
Yep.
and yeah, their performance, we see major impacts of devices. We Our big thing is saying that more tech is not always better tech, or is not
Mm.
always more efficient, and always doesn't always improve workplace processes and workflows and performance of employees, because we know digital overload leads to constant digital disruption. Um, we like to talk about switch tasking versus multitasking, in that as humans, we think that we multitask, but we really don't. We are switch tasking.
Yes.
So a great example is I used to have my mum, she used to say how, she, as a mum of three boys, that she could always had to multitask, and I'd get home from school and she'd be on the phone to my grandma, and she'd be making dinner, and she'd be writing down school reports and then watching TV in the background. And I
Yep.
always used to think how amazing mum, she can do all these things at once.
Yep.
But really, when I sort of reflect on and look back, what she's more doing is really switch tasking. She's quickly talking to grandma on the phone, then she's quickly watching the TV, then she's quickly making dinner, and then she's quickly switching her concentration to
Mm.
writing the reports. And essentially, every time that we switch task, we increase the amount of mistakes that we make, we increase the amount of stress that we're put under, and we increase the amount of time that it takes to do things. And I think that the latest research is that we're distracted digitally every 3 minutes in the
Wow.
workplace now. On average, it's about 275 times daily. So
Gosh,
the more,
that's
yeah,
massive, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, the more switch tasking that we're sort of undertaking, that this is actually having a sort of an inverse effect
Mm.
on our performance. And so, yeah, there was some really great research which was done by the Economist Impact, which showed that actually Australia really has the most to gain from improving and sort of auditing their work processes, especially when it comes to digital disruption.
Yep.
Um, they said that around 43% economic growth can
Wow.
potentially come from managing digital disruption better in the workplace. yeah, especially with knowledge workers. So people who are, you know, typically in the office doing non-repetitive tasks, and sort of, you know, instant messaging services, emails, phone calls, personal devices. They were pretty much up there as the top of the tree when it comes to those most common sources of disruption.
Yeah, wow. The
Mm.
stats that you just mentioned, I mean, they're mind blowing. And to
Mm.
think that, after every distraction, it takes a certain amount of time, to come back to refocus, um, tune in, etc. Those stats sort of make me think we're not able to actually focus during the
Yeah.
day because we're constantly being distracted or switching and really hard to actually get things done.
And I think we in some of our workshops we talk about, they say that it's 23 minutes for our brain to regain full
Yeah.
concentration on a task for
Mm.
when we lose it. So, you know, the math there, Lou, doesn't add up. If we're
It
being
doesn't.
disrupted every 3 minutes and it takes 23 minutes to regain concentration, pretty much from where to go, when we pick up our first piece of work in the morning to when we put it down at night, our brain is consistently switch tasking. It's consistently changing
Mm.
from topic to person to task to context. And yeah, our brain is pretty much never really given the full freedom or space that it needs to actually engage in deep, concerted, focused work. So yeah,
Absolutely.
we sort of work off a bit of like a graph here. There's that sort of, with the technology and the more that we use it, it kind of gets to a place where there's a perfect and there's a happy medium there. And
Mm.
then the more that it comes, it sort of goes down the edge of this, the sort of the back end of this hill, the more tech becomes actually more inefficient. So it's helping businesses find what what their workflow processes and how they can actually improve and promote that efficiency the best.
Mm. I just I can't get past those stats and
Mm.
um you know overlapping well-being, it just makes me um think, wow, it this is having so much more of an impact than what I thought that
Yeah.
it was, and I knew that it was having an impact. um you know just the fact, you know following on from the stats, it's telling me that our brain is constantly turned on.
Yeah.
Um, so there's no place for the rest, digest, calming a nervous system or
Yeah.
anything like that. And how do people actually get their work done
Mm.
with all of the distractions and interruptions and the screen time, which obviously then impacts performance and everything comes back to well-being.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's amazing people actually get anything done in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
day. Like,
yeah,
wow, I'm
yeah, it
blown
is.
away. I'm really blown
Yeah.
away with
And
those
I
stats.
think probably the misconception here is that, like, if you're constantly available, then that is a sign of productivity. You know, if you were to turn off Microsoft Teams or turn off your emails for 2 hours because you've got X, Y, and Z tasks that you really need to get done and they need to be done at a really high standard with a lot of focus, then the perception in modern day workplaces now is that is, that's either lazy or that you're not doing your job properly. And I understand that there's multiple reasons why people need to be connected
Mm.
they need to be able to be reached at certain points of the day. But yeah, I think there's a general culture which says that, yeah, constant connectivity is a sign is a sign of sort of performance,
Mm.
which is
And
probably not the case.
what comes up for me, and what I'm about to say, it's a whole other podcast, so we don't need to go into it today. But what comes up for me in regards to what you were just saying is boundaries. When we
Mm.
are available all of the time and connected, um, that's just saying yes to everything and not having boundaries around our time, ourselves, our own performance.
Mm.
Um, and isn't it interesting that we have these really important tasks to do that need and require focus, but yet people are available. Um, so you're not actually performing at your best and or being as productive as what you can be. Um, so, you know, productivity's down and everything is down. Um, Yeah, it's amazing. I know I've had conversations before with people, leaders, in regards to bringing in a no interruption, no distraction, whether it be
Yeah.
hour or 2 hours, um, so that, people have that amount of time where screens are off, they disconnect as such and do whatever it is that they need to do without the distractions. And I think it's a really great idea. And I mean,
Mm.
it just requires really good communication
Yeah.
around it and educating people. I think it would be brilliant for well-being in the workplace. But there's a whole lot of education that and communication that needs to happen around that. You
Absolutely.
mentioned the word culture before. So let's talk culture because obviously it's a buzzword.
Yeah.
And the culture of a workplace is very, very important. And it absolutely dictates, how psychologically healthy the workplace is and, everything about a workplace. So, how can workplaces, in your opinion, how can workplaces create a healthier digital culture, especially when, say, remote work, Teams chats, and 24/7 emails feel like the norm?
Yeah. Well, I think, Lou, I'm going to piggyback off you a little bit here because you just hit the nail on the head there when you talked about communication and creating standards. So, beginning the conversation. What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? What are we expectations around when people are available? What are the expectations around messaging within work hours, after work hours?
Mm.
Are employees generally able to disconnect for an hour where deep focus is needed? You know, do we just say that this is something that we're going to allow our employees to do? Are managers supporting an environment which actually facilitates this. What workflows work for which teams? Like, we work with smaller teams within teams of
Yeah.
workplaces.
Yep.
Um, and it's amazing how many times that these people actually haven't had the conversations or the communication about their individual team workflows. So I'll give you a really, really quick example. We worked at a workplace here in Melbourne a few months ago, and we were talking about they worked off Microsoft Teams this particular business, and essentially one of the guys got up and said that he goes on Do Not Disturb for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon on Microsoft Teams,
Yep.
and that if people really need to contact him, that he has his work phone sitting there and he prefers people to call him
Yep.
if it's that urgent. And that he was sitting there talking about this, and the four or five other people within his direct workflow hadn't been told that or didn't even know that. And so
Yep.
then, it was like a bit of a spark where they all sort of turned around and were like, oh well, that makes a lot more sense now because we're sort of trying to access you here, or we needed this and that sort of stuff done. And now they know, that making that clear communication is so important. One of the other people in that workflow worked from home predominantly.
Hmm.
And they said, I have my Microsoft Teams turned on, but in the group settings or the group chats, I only have like mentions turned on. So mentions where they might, at such and such
Yeah.
employee. So then they directly get a notification for that. And he said that they said that I only get a notification turned on when somebody actually mentions me in a message. And so then they're not privy to any of the other messages that go on because they're not directly
Yeah, great.
directed to them. And so, the funny thing was again with that one was that he hadn't actually, or they hadn't actually,
Hadn't told
you know,
anyone.
spoken about this, or they hadn't
Yeah.
actually had these conversations. And so it's so important to start with that clear
Mm.
communication and the culture of um, accepting and understanding and um, being really clear about what's expected, what's the plan of attack,
Yeah.
what's going, not just accepted, but like really embraced too. And I think
Yes.
the managers and line managers and directors and those type of things have a really important part to play in that when it comes to, you know, allowing the space and the time to actually have these
Yes.
conversations and then follow through with it and really promote it. It's really easy if you need to contact someone really quickly or you're stressed and there's a lot of things going on. You know, oh, I'm just going to message the group and do it that way and get it out quick and easily and push it out. But you know, in those moments, being really strong with it and saying no, this isn't the process, or
Mm.
these are the channels that we need to go through. Some other interesting culture things that we've heard from other workplaces are escalation processes. So, in terms of information, I need to ask Lou a question, but I know Lou's in a deep focus for 2 hours. So I go to X, Y, and Z first. And then that comes back around to Lou
Great.
if it needs to. Physical signs and cues. We've heard of employees having, green, orange, and red little flags on their desk, and
Okay.
they put green flag if they're available, that people can come up to them at any time during the day and speak to
Yep.
them if they need to. Orange is I'm concentrating, but if you really need to talk to me, I can be disrupted.
Yep.
Red is don't come near me. I'm doing
Not
something.
now.
Yeah,
Yep.
don't come here. Um, workflow processes and questions and queries to be sort of addressed at once. So having small meetings or a time where people come together and they ask all questions at once, whether it be in the morning or the afternoon. It could be 15 or 20 minutes. And instead of having messages fling back and forth and things, that the whole team comes in at once and that's it's a bit of a round table and people have the opportunity to ask things, clarify things.
I
Yeah,
love it.
designated
So
rooms.
many
Yeah,
ideas.
there's
So
all these
many.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
many
and we
strategies.
yeah, we work with the employees and we don't come in and say, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
What we do is we come in and we actually ask for their opinions and we get them to open up in this
Great.
forum
Yep.
about what they think can help them within their workflow and them individually, and then
Yes.
what the company can do for them, and then what they can do for the company and the people around them. And then, yeah, what they do is they share these, they write these down. We actually take it back and end up sending a workflow process and a recommendations report, focus on productivity
Wow.
and well-being back to the workplace and
Yeah.
say, this is what your employees have said. 78% say that they could benefit from having an hour of power where
Mm.
notifications are turned off. Um, 68% might say that they want a designated room, which is a focus room.
Great.
58% said that they would love big noise cancelling headphones
Yeah.
accessible at the workplace, all that sort of stuff. Some of the input and the ideas from the employees are as you would imagine, are fantastic because they're the ones on the
Totally.
ground level. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
People often, quite often, they have the solution
Mm.
to the problem. It's just that they're sometimes not asked. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so when we open up conversations like what you're doing and your business is doing, you're giving employees a voice. It's really practical and you're finding solutions. And what I also love is you're reporting that back to, leadership, management, business owners, so that change can happen too. I love it. Such important conversations. And, I'm just going to mention again, and, for everyone, anyone listening to our podcast today, communication is everything. um, just asking questions, getting curious, talking about issues, challenges, and what we, as a team can do to solve them. things things change, things get solved. Things don't become as hard anymore when we open up the conversation. So well done. Businesses who are working alongside you and or with you, wow, they are getting so much from that relationship. So yeah, well done. I love it.
Thanks, Lou.
You mentioned you mentioned offline experiences are key to well-being. Just wondering if you can share what some of your favorite logged off moments look like, whether that's you personally or from your community, because I'm sure people listening today are going to be very inspired by what you have to say and by what you're doing. They've already got lots of, like practical ideas, but often we want to know, well, what does it look like in real life? And or, yeah, like, what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. I do a lot of different stuff. You know, I just want to preface it by saying that the easy thing is the tech, and if it wasn't so easy, then we wouldn't do it so much. And so, challenging yourself to unplug or log off is super important. What I try to do is the whole process, especially around social media, that I found that I was spending a lot of time on social media, and that was kind of a little bit of my kryptonite, Instagram in
Mm.
particular. And that what I've tried to do is replace it with off-screen activities, which still produce the same kind of dopamine in our brain. So it sort of replicates, the process of going on your phone, but it does it in like a healthy and sustainable way. And so device-free exercise is a fantastic one. Things like reading, spending time in nature, um, cooking, problem solving or decluttering your bedroom
Yep.
or your house. There's heaps of different ways that we can, and there's heaps of different sources of dopamine all around us that are really sustainable and healthy. And so by replacing that habit of continual device usage by sort of replicating the dopamine process in our brains, what happens then is that really creates long-term change because we kind of scratch the itch when it comes to our brains and craving that sort of hit and that feeling of goodness,
Mm.
but we do it in a sustainable and healthy kind of way with healthy sources. So that's a
Love
really
it.
important one.
Yeah.
Ctrl Your Scroll had an event which was called Ctrl Your Scroll Unplugged. Essentially, what we did was
Great
we
name.
opened it up to the community. Yeah, and here in Melbourne, we went to Carlton Gardens. You
Hmm.
might know where that is. And on a Friday night, we invited anybody could come.
Mm.
And the one rule was that you couldn't bring your phone or your phone had to be away, and we didn't want to see any devices. And um, this was a fantastic night. Like it went so much better than we expected. We had I think about 30 or 40 people come.
Great.
Nobody on their devices, nobody on phones, and we got some feedback and we had some conversations with people at the end of the night and in the following days and weeks, and it was amazing to hear just some of the feedback about how much people enjoyed having conversations which weren't being interrupted by
Yeah.
devices
I was about
and
to say, are you telling me that people actually had to talk to each other
yeah,
and
yeah, they
connect?
did,
Yeah. And
and
in nature,
yeah.
as well. Wow.
And it's amazing how much people actually do love it, and that's our sort of like our base setting, and that we crave that in person
Yes.
connection and relationship, and so yeah, that was a really cool moment for us, I think. It was just, yeah, people getting back to prioritizing their in-person social interaction, and sort of being conscious of the impact which their device can have on those. And yeah, and it was amazing to see all different types of people talking and communicating with
Yeah,
others. and
great.
and what a few people said to us was about how usually when they're at a social event and they've spoken to one of their friends and they might be feeling a bit awkward, or they go and have a chat to somebody else and they can't really be bothered, and they pull your phone out and you use it as a bit of like a stopping cue kind of thing,
Yeah.
to sort of like cure the awkwardness and
Yes.
fill in a bit of time. And because you couldn't do that, some of the conversations and people communicating or conversing who probably never really would,
Mm.
was a really cool moment. And we're looking to run a lot more of these. And yeah,
Excellent.
so that's been a really cool logged off moment,
I
I suppose,
love
for us.
that. Please make sure you let us know at the team
Absolutely.
approach when you are running them, because I'd love to promote them for you, alongside you as well, because I think it's
Thanks, Lou.
such a healthy thing to do. Um, and as humans, we're here to connect and to belong.
Absolutely.
Core needs. So you're meeting those needs by organizing those events. It's excellent. I'm curious, what's one digital habit shift that has made the biggest difference to your well-being? I know it's
Yeah,
hard to actually
there's so
nominate
many.
one,
Yeah.
but what's the biggest, or what's had the biggest impact, would you say?
Yeah. Um, there's so many different ones, and I started with making a lot of changes which were on screen changes. So things like blocking sessions on apps,
Yep.
um, all those different types of things that we can do on screens. And what I found was that they were really good for a short period of time. But what ends up happening is that because you can turn them off or reverse them or change them,
Yep.
that it didn't really create the long term sort of behavioral change that I was after. Probably the one thing that has made the biggest difference is delineating between intention and feeling when it comes to tech and device usage. And some really interesting research, which actually was run by the University of Melbourne, showed that around 50% of device usage of adults is in response to uncomfortable emotion.
Yeah, wow.
And so pretty much those sort of emotions that they said were the most common which arose were things like stress,
Hmm.
boredom, tiredness, and awkwardness. And
Yep.
so really 50% of the time that we touch our devices or we use it, they're not for a specific purpose. Like I'm going on to check the weather to see
Yeah.
what I need to get changed in
Like
today,
no
or
intention
yeah,
attached.
no
Yeah.
intention. Yeah, rather than just to respond to a feeling and to sort of escape that feeling through their device. And so, being really aware of that and sort of creating a internal system of checks for.
Mm.
So I feel like every time now I reach my phone or I'd go to turn the TV on or do something on a device. I've now created a pattern which in my head it goes, and it's subconscious now. I don't
Yep.
even think about it, but
Yeah.
it's,
You've done it
intention.
enough so many
Yeah,
times. Yeah.
yeah. You think intention or feeling, intention, sorry, purpose or feeling rather. Purpose is really easy to identify, but feeling is a bit harder. And
Yes.
and what that makes you do is it makes you think, if I'm not here on for a purpose, or I'm not about to go on my device for a specific reason,
Mm.
um, then what is the underlying feeling?
Yep.
And then what it does is it forces you to work back a bit and go, this feeling might be because I'm stressed about something which is coming up. So
Mm.
how can I actually respond to that stress in a more effective way and approach that stress? Or, I am doing it because I feel bored.
Mm.
Okay, well, what's something that I can do to help cure that boredom in a healthy and sustainable way? Um, I feel awkward or whatever feeling that you might be experiencing. And it forces you to work back and then uncover the underlying sort of motivations and feelings and
Mm.
emotions that you're experiencing, and then promoting approach strategies to those, which is, one, it's really good for your screen time because it makes you a lot more aware of what you're doing on your devices. But the second is, and probably the most important, is that it's so good for your mental well-being and your mental health because you're actually approaching
Absolutely.
these uncomfortable emotions when they arise on a daily basis, rather than sort of pushing them to the side and using your device as what we sort of call a digital pacifier, as an
Yes.
artificial state of regulation where we think we're sort of dealing with these feelings, but really we're not. We're just pushing them to one side, and they're going to arise and they're going to pop up. in the future,
Absolutely. Yes.
in more sort of even aggressive or more powerful because we're now actually dealing with them. So yeah, we teach people and we work with people about how they can create those own sort of internal checks within their own
Love
lives.
that. That's brilliant. So brilliant. And I'm so glad you're doing that work and, working alongside people in that way. And, you know, us at the team approach, oh, well, I just love what you were saying. And it really resonates because, you know, as counselors, as well-being professionals, our work is exactly like what you're saying, going to those deeper levels to find the patterns, the avoidance, what's the reason, purpose for that habit, and because we need to understand what's happening to be able to change it as such. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
well done for what you're doing. I have loved having you on the podcast today, Tom. I could keep talking to you for so long, all day. So I think you're definitely going to have to come back because
Absolutely.
there's so much more I would love to ask, to find out, and so much more. I know that our listeners are going to want to know. So you have to promise me that you will come
Yeah,
back.
absolutely would love to.
It's just been amazing, and I'm so glad that you said yes to coming on the podcast. I love everything that you're doing, what Control Your Scroll is about, how passionate you are. And I know from meeting you and having chats, I know the impact that this has had personally for you, and the impact that it's having at a broader community, society, workplace level. So well done. Um, can you please tell everyone where they can find you? Because I just have this funny little feeling that people are really going to want to reach out to you. They're going to want to learn more, know more. And I really hope that workplaces will, get in touch with you in regards to what you do, because you're having such a fantastic impact. So give us your contact
Yeah.
details.
Thanks, Lou. So we've got a website. It's
Yep.
www.controlyourscroll.com.au. Now, control is spelled CTRL,
Yep.
like your key on your keyboard.
I love
Um,
that.
so we've got a website that's got all of our contact details. You can submit information inquiries, and we'll get someone to reach out and have a chat with you. Funnily enough, we do have an Instagram
Yep.
and the LinkedIn. It's a bit counterintuitive, but yeah, there we sort of post what's going on, some of the up-to-date research,
Great.
what people can do practically, and that type of stuff. So give us a follow on there,
Yeah,
and
great.
yeah, always love to hear from people, whether it be from a workplace, a school, anybody from anywhere, even if it's just for a chat about what we do, and if you want to pick my brain or pick our brains on these topics, we love talking to anyone and everyone about this.
That's great.
Yeah, I think you said before we are really passionate about it. This is something we
Yes,
love, and so yeah, please contact us at any time, and yeah, get these conversations going. So thank you so
absolutely.
much for having me too, Lou.
Oh,
I love chatting to you about all things well-being, and your passion and your knowledge around this area is absolutely admirable. And yeah, I would love to come back and continue these conversations. We'll probably continue talking for another hour after we finish this
I
podcast, I think.
know.
So
I know.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
thank
nothing
you.
will get done, but thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me.
Thank you so much on it. Oh, it's going to be a great day. I just know today after our chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And listeners, Tom is an all-round great guy. So do reach out to him. You will learn so much. He genuinely cares. He's great to chat to, and there's no judgment either in regards to the conversation around controlling your scroll. It's very proactive. It's preventative. It's compassionate, and he has so much information for us all to learn and to take on board. So please reach out to him. He's making such a difference, and I think that that's really, really important. Tom, thank you. Our listeners are very lucky to have had the opportunity to listen to you today. So thank you so much for joining us. And everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in to the EAP Counselor podcast today. Please reach out to Tom, and I look forward to bringing another podcast your way very, very soon. Have an awesome day, everybody, and we'll be back soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.